All right. Well, welcome to another expert interview. As always, super excited for today's guest. We always attract the best people. Before we jump in, if you're watching this on YouTube, please go below the video, comment with questions you have or feedback for our guest. Like, subscribe. We are putting content out all the time with the goal of creating awesome value for you so that you can get something to take away and implement in your life or your business. So let's jump straight into it. Today's guest is Julie. Julie, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. Thanks, Devin. I've been looking forward to our conversation. I'm Julie Winkle Giulioni, and I'm an author, speaker, and consultant in the leadership and talent and career development space. Been working in this space most of my career, and over the last 20 or so years, I've been out on my own working with organizations worldwide to help really, invest in and develop their only sustainable competitive advantage, which is people.
Love it. Such a hot topic. And I know we're going to talk about the new book coming out, but I finished it. It's amazing. So I'm really excited to dig into that. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're busy. I know you're working on a lot of different things, so I appreciate that. What do you see trending in your space? What's trending in the people world?
What's trending in the people world is what's front page, it seems, day in and day out, which is the Great Resignation. This focus on the exodus of workers for any number of reasons, and the labor shortages and the really shallow talent pool that organizations have to draw upon. And so I think what's trending is organizations and their focus on how do we retain the talent that we've got, stem that attrition, and find ways to really engage people in a way that allows them to thrive and to help the business thrive as well.
That's awesome. Well, that's a great transition. So I've got the book in front of me here. Promotions are so yesterday. Why don't we transition into you just giving us a quick overview of what is the book? When's the official release date? Give us an overview.
Oh, thank you. One of my favorite things to talk about these days. It is Promotions Are So Yesterday, Redefine Career Development, Help Employees Thrive. And it's being published by TD Press. It comes out on March 8th, and it's available now for pre-order at all your favorite booksellers.
Love it. So excited. What's the book cover? What's the core of the book? Give us the elevator pitch for the book.
The bottom line is, over the last 10 years since my first book, Help Them Grow or Watch Them Go, came out, I've been working with managers who find themselves stymied and sometimes reluctant to engage in career conversations with their people. And when I get, under the hood on what's going on, for many of them, it's this fundamental fear, and it's based upon a misconception that what everyone wants is that next promotion in the corner office and the raise and all the things that managers have very little control over. And so I've done some research over these past 10 years to really isolate what are people looking for out of their work, out of their jobs, out of the development that's available to them. And what's quite stunning is that the promotion, while still, something that we're going to aspire to during the course of our careers, but the promotion itself is much less interesting to folks than other dimensions of their work. And so what the book is about is really a hopeful message for managers, one that says, hey, there's a lot that's within your sphere of influence, within your control that you can bring to bear that'll help people grow, that'll help them be engaged, that will help them thrive, and that'll help keep them with you longer.
Awesome. So let's do an overview of we'll call it the 8 C's. So what are the 8 C's that are referenced in the book? And then I want to talk about the assessment after that.
Super, thank you. So just backing up a little bit from the C's, the way we got to this central framework that I call the multidimensional career framework is, over the last 10 years, every keynote, training session, conversation I've had, I've asked people, what does career mean to you? And of course, the top layer is frequently, well, it's, what I do to be able to take care of myself and my family. But then after that, what people start talking about is so profound. And so over these 10 years, gathered a gazillion, that's the technical term for it, data points. But as a result of those conversations, what we were able to do is look at it and see 8 themes come out of all of those conversations. And those 8 themes ultimately became the various development dimensions that leaders and employees can look at. So, for instance, there's contribution. People want to make a difference, show up, be of service to each other, live on purpose. Second one is competence. We understand that there's a need for ongoing growth and development. There's connection, which, the last 2 years has really punctuated the need for that human connection, that sense of community, that sense of having my people around me and making contributions on that kind of a human level. There's confidence. There are certain times during our career when what we need more than anything else is to double down on really securing that sense of assuredness and that, I got this at work. There's challenge. Vast number of people are coming to work every day looking to push themselves, to stretch their capacity, to see, where are the edges, to step into the discomfort zone, which can be a huge benefit for them personally and for the organization. There's a development of contentment. And again, this over the last couple of years has become even more important, more present in the workplace. Before the pandemic, we were starting to really get into how do we figure out the work-life balance or integration. But now people are really looking very hard, and organizations are helping them figure out how can we find the balance and the joy and the contentment and the ease and the meaning that we want from work. There's also a dimension of choice. Again, the last 2 years have been huge, especially as organizations are inviting, I say that, with air quotes, inviting people to come back into the workplace. Folks who had flexibility and autonomy and a volition over the last couple of years, working from home or wherever, they're like, oh, maybe, that's not what I want. So that notion of having some control over one's domain. And then finally, the last C is climbing the corporate ladder. And promotions are going to continue to be a part of the landscape. But what's interesting is those other 7 Cs, they're totally within the control of managers and employees. Whereas promotions and positions and moves, those are organizationally, kind of sanctioned and limited.
Love that. Thank you for the overview. I think it's important that, one, they understand. I love that you used all C's. It helps on remembering. But I just want people to understand, there are so many more ways to engage with building a team. And we were talking before we started, a lot of these things I've done over the years, but I didn't have words or processes to really define them. So it's hard to replicate. The book makes it very easy to replicate because not only does it give you clear understanding of what each piece is, it gives you a clear understanding of how to navigate each one in conversations with an employee or a team member. And I think that's where there's so much value.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. That's really what I was aspiring to do, was to bring form to the best practices, around engaging and developing folks, but then also to turn it into a playbook, because managers today, they're so busy, so strapped, so stretched, and anything we can do to make life easier, make it, more easeful for them to enable that kind of development and engagement is good for everybody.
I love that. So let's talk about the self-assessment. It's the first tool that's kind of introduced. It's early on, and I love and encourage everybody to definitely do the self-assessment. I found it really interesting, and I guess I have a couple questions about it. One, I fall into the everybody category because I flip the page and then it's like, well, here's what the top 2 are. And I'm like, fantastic. Same here.
So your high points were contribution and competence?
Contribution, competence, and then I had a tie for contentment as well.
Oh, interesting. So yeah, you absolutely represent, the majority there. I was blown away. We had created the model based upon 10 years of field research, but then we had to, do a validation study. I knew they were viable dimensions, but were they going to be really valuable when compared to the idea of climbing the corporate ladder? So we did this validation study with 750 folks worldwide and just simply asked them to rank the 8 C's in terms of their current level of interest. And I was blown away. Contribution was number 1 across the board in aggregate. Competence was number 2. Climbing the corporate ladder was dead last.
Yeah, it's dead last for me. It's 6 points on your score. It's not only is it dead last, it's dead last half, right?
Yeah.
Like it's half the score. Um, it's so validating. So that's why I wanted to like bring the assessment up. And I think that as a business owner, a team leader, or an employee, there's value in the test taking it yourself and really understanding like, well, what is important, because knowing that contribution and competence may be high up there for the majority, right? If we're going to assume the law of numbers, there's
Mhm.
definitely value in just taking the time to understand those two. If all you did in the first month of having the book is dial in one of those and how you can communicate that to your team, there's going to be an inherent value.
That's a really great point. Yeah. And again, back to busy managers, you've got to spend your time wisely. Doubling down on those two does become key.
I love that. And I think that this is a great team read book. I always like reading with my employees so they understand where I'm coming from. And I think that this could definitely be one of those books where you guys all read together and then you bring up the conversations from an owner standpoint, a manager standpoint, a team standpoint, and say like, hey, how did this chapter resonate with you? And create some like really good dialogue around it, because there might be some creative ideas that come out of the team aspect. But this is probably a great team read.
It was interesting. I wrote the book specifically for managers and leaders. And yet, when I sent it out for endorsements, those endorsements started coming back from a personal perspective, from, how I can use this for myself. So it became clear to me that, it does really resonate with both the manager and the audience, the employee, and bringing those two together in conversation can only support really powerful career development outcomes.
I love that. How do we let's talk about like maybe one or two really distinct, clear takeaways. So for the managers, business owners listening, what are one or two conversation points or tools they can implement right now that would give them a head start on this conversation?
Let's see. So much of it is going to depend upon the priorities of your employees. So maybe the meta bit of advice would be that if you had the book, you don't have to read the whole thing. You just have to stay one chapter ahead. So by having employees complete the assessment, understanding what their priorities are, you can dig in. The chapters are quick. Dig in and do your homework just in time before that conversation to have some of the tools and resources and strategies to be able to work with an employee, collaborate, brainstorm, and create a really good plan. The key to me is understanding what the priorities are. And so the assessment helps you to do that. And then following up with a really rich dialogue around what it is about that dimension that's most interesting to them right now. What is it about that resonates for them? What is it about this point in time in their career that makes that a real priority? And then to set a clear goal for the development. That goal setting is really clear. There's a lot of activity around career development without necessarily a crystallized goal. So helping people crystallize, for instance, contribution might be your top priority. Then through any additional contribution that you're going to make, whatever activities we figure out that doubles down on that, what is your goal in making that happen? Are there new skills you want to make? Are there new networks that you want to tap into? Are there new capacities and levels of competence that you want to build? Whatever it might be. So having that goal, and then that drives the activity. And I guess the final thing would be, so frequently in the past, we've looked to the organization to provide whatever development resources there might be for career development, whether it's courses or workshops or conferences, whatever it might be. Going forward, career development is going to increasingly be developed within the context of the relationship of the manager and the employee. And so thinking more organically, do it yourself. What are the experiences and the activities right there in the workflow versus sending people away to get these needs met? That's going to be key to being able to drive this kind of development forward.
Love it. So much good information there. On the assessment, is it available online somewhere already, or do we need to wait for them to get the book?
Yeah, so it's in the book in paper form. And then we have a slightly different version of it online using a slightly different methodology, but the same dimensions. And it creates an output, a printed report, PDF report for the individual that talks about, that introduces the whole framework, but talks about their top priority in more detail and offers some reflection questions. So for managers who really want to make use of it, sending folks to do this confidential assessment, but then inviting them to bring back the results of it creates an opportunity for those folks to kind of be pre-sold a little bit on some of the ideas and to do their own thinking. So they come to that conversation with pre-digested with some ideas already in play. So it enriches that conversation with the manager.
Love it. Is there a cost to that, or is that just available on your website?
Nope, just free. Want to get the word out and help enrich those conversations.
Awesome. What's the URL for the website?
It's juliewinklegiulioni.com, and you'll see it under the promotions or so yesterday page.
Perfect. So that would be my big takeaway for you guys. I think that beginning of the year, which is when we're recording this, there's always a good time to talk to employees, but right now it's a great time because it's the beginning of the year. It's a great time to set goals. You've probably set your strategic goals for the year as a business, and those goals need to be transferred to your team to hit success, right? You can't hit those goals by yourself. So I think now is a great time to have those conversations. And I love that you recommend that. Have your team go take the assessment, read it, digest it, and bring that conversation to the table so you can meet with them on your business goals, but then align with them on what are your personal goals and how do we help you achieve those this year while we're chasing the bigger goals as well. So love that.
Yeah. And you know, what you're saying just is so powerful, Devin, because it isn't either or, it's both and, isn't it? Where we can find the overlap between the business goals and the individual goals. That is such rich space to be mined for development, for learning, for opportunities to make a difference and really engage people in meaningful ways.
I love that. Yeah, I something I've always told people when we're talking about team development is I love KPIs, right? And the conversation of like really clear, trackable things that I can hold you accountable to and you can hold you accountable to. And the way I've always recommended generating KPIs is ask your team, right? Ask your team to bring to the table what they should be held accountable for. Obviously, for new employees, that's not going to work. But if you have tenured staff, have them come to the table and say, like, here's what I think I should be held accountable for in my position. You would be amazed at what the responses are. And some of the stuff in there is stuff that maybe you thought was an overreach of accountability, but actually they want that accountability because it's where they shine. And it creates this really cool dialogue where when they slip up, which everyone's going to, right? Personal life will impact professional. You can then bring that back. You can have this document that they self-generated and have a mutual conversation about, hey, here's what we agreed to, you and I, on your position, right? This isn't a me telling you, this is an us. And it should become a non-emotional conversation because it was agreed to. And if we can remove emotion from development, we can actually have progress.
Oh my gosh, Devin, so much gold there to be mined here. I just want to double click on a couple of things. That idea of having folks bring their own goals to the table, so powerful. Because you're right, they'll frequently set the bar so much higher than we would. And that speaks to the stretch and the challenge desires that people are bringing to the workplace today. We just, I think out of what we think is kindness or giving them a little bit of a break, we don't necessarily push them quite that hard. So that is brilliant. The idea of ownership, it's so much easier to address those gaps when someone has volunteered to do something versus when it's been imposed upon them. And those conversations are so much easier when we catch it early. If we're waiting until a year to be able to provide that feedback, that's a harder conversation than if day in and day out, we're kind of checking in. And when things just start to get off track, we can intervene. That redirection, much easier than when things are 90 degrees wrong.
I love the annual review conversation, right? I think that annual review model fits into the promotion and climb model. And I think it is so yesterday, just like the climb thing. And that's something I have to talk to employers about a lot is like, hey, if we're going to do team development, we can't have enough conversations. And we did an expert interview with Karen. She's an HR consultant, and that was her number one takeaway: is just talk to your team more. And right now, it's more important than ever.
Yeah, yeah. And there's almost every interaction a manager or leader has with people is an opportunity to discuss development. Nearly every interaction offers a cue to be able to double click on, what are you interested in? Where are the challenges? What are you loving doing these days? What are the, what are you hearing from customers? How are things changing? Nearly every conversation gives us an opportunity to inquire and pivot toward the development that's going to make sense for folks.
I love that. Taking that one step further, just again, something else that is so recent in conversations in the last week doing kind of annual planning with people is, I love to talk about the ABC players, right? Do you have an A player that's performing? Do you have a B player that's showing up? And do you have a C player that just isn't performing, right? C players can be great A players if repositioned, and as long as they have quality characteristics, right? So as long as they have, ethics, as long as they're polite, they show up on time, like whatever your core characteristics and culture are, right? If they align with that, we might need to reposition them. And what I found, especially for tenured employees, the last thing we want is people to get bored in their position unless that's what they want. Like if they want to just have that like extreme contentment, that's great, but they probably want more. So have those conversations because maybe they'll raise their hand. And a great example is like one employee working with a nonprofit was like, you know what, I really want to learn more about social media and I've been doing it a lot and I have some flexibility at work. So like, it'd be awesome if they trusted me to run our social media. And then bringing that back to the ED saying, hey, you have someone who can provide a service that you're struggling with and it empowers them and it's a positive, like you have to have these conversations. So that came out of what was recommended from someone else called a stay interview, right? So make sure you're talking to your team on what else can we do to make you better in your position and the company better for you.
Yeah. And that's just a beautiful example of having the conversation that surfaces the information that allows for that kind of a win-win. Every organization I go into and consult with, every manager I talk with, it's stunning how many of those golden opportunities are sitting there where folks want to do what's necessary to drive the business. And it's a matter of leaders being cue sensitive, aware of the business, and having those conversations to be able to find the marriages.
Love that. So let's pivot to your journey. I always like to ask everyone I'm interviewing, if you think back about your career, your journey, congrats on all the success, love everything you're doing. What's one or two takeaways or things you would tell your younger self that would have empowered you earlier?
Wow. The biggie probably would be to, not sweat the small stuff, figure out what's really important, what's really going to make the difference and invest there. Decide what dimensions of my performance I want to excel at and which ones are less important. Not everything needs to get A+ effort and A+ results. You got to, create those, find those and create those trade-offs. So really more of a prioritizing conversation would have been really helpful with young Julie. Would have kept the gray hairs at bay a little longer.
I love that. And I love there's a little bit of forgiveness in there, right? You got to have great mercy for yourself on the journey because you're going to fail, you're going to struggle, and you're going to not know stuff. And it's okay. It is perfectly acceptable. And if you surround yourself with awesome people, mentors, or align yourself with groups of people, friends, support structures, resources, consultants, they can guide you through some of those moments. And I know that's how I was able to dodge a couple. And then maybe when I was unplugged is when I got hit a couple times. So I love that.
Yeah, it does. It takes a village, doesn't it?
It takes a village in all aspects. Yes. So let's talk about recommended reading. What's a book you would recommend to our listeners? What's something you think would be valuable?
Well, I've just started it, but I can already recommend it. It's Brene Brown's newest book, Atlas of the Heart.
Okay.
It's really establishing a rich vocabulary around emotion, and her writing is beautiful. The research it's based upon is always spot on, and I can't walk away from anything Brene Brown does not feeling inspired.
Love that. Great. That's a great one. Let everybody add that to your reading list for the year. I know I've got my stack of the first 5 I'm reading this year, so chipping away at them. Before we wrap up, any final words of guidance, empowerment tools to our listeners? Anything else you want to leave them with?
No, I think the bottom line is career development is one of the most important, impactful activities that managers and leaders engage in. And as you discovered from the self-assessment, when we expand the definition of what career development is and what development might look like, when we include a broader palette of options, of colors with which to paint, employees are going to gravitate toward any number of different priorities and dimensions, not just that climb up the corporate ladder. So for managers who are fearful about engaging in conversations, fearful that they can't deliver on an expectation they think that employees have, maybe rethink that. Have some conversations, and you might be really pleasantly surprised at the varied interests that folks have and the ways you can deliver on that in such a way that it meets their needs for growth, it meets your own business needs, and it helps to address the retention problem that many organizations are contending with today.
So impactful. And I think one thing that I think is important there, and I was going to mention this earlier, so I'm glad that you ended there, is, I think we're often scared of confrontation, and most of the time confrontation is just a misaligned conversation. And the more time you spend telling yourself what the conversation may be, you're probably even further away from what it will be. So often just, if you put it on the calendar, it has to happen. So go get all of your team members on the calendar and force yourself to have that uncomfortable moment. But I have a feeling you're going to be very rewarded in having those conversations, and they're not going to be as confrontational as you expect. And if they are, typically that's the team member that is so misaligned that maybe it's time to have a non-emotional thought process around whether they're a long-term fit or not. I know sometimes we need people to stick a hole in a finger and stop stuff from flooding, but at a certain point, if they're creating more holes as they're plugging one, it's not a fit.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing you really say, Devin, is maybe it's time to replace the fear that we have of having those conversations with curiosity about where folks are really coming from. And it can surface tremendous surprises.
Oh, so good. So change the fear for curiosity. Yes. 100% yes. Julie, you're awesome. I appreciate your time. I would love to do this again. I want to do a couple HR roundtables and really just get some different perspective, because I know everyone's working with different size organizations and different backgrounds. So I appreciate your time. I have a feeling we'll do this again. For those of you who are wondering, yes, I'm wearing a Harry Potter shirt with a cat on it. My spouse and I just opened our cat cafe, so don't judge me for wearing fun cat shirts on future interviews. It's part of the business now. Well, thanks again, Julie. We appreciate you.
Thank you.